Hi, everybody. Welcome in on a cold, wet Friday. A properly caffeinated Dennis Schiraldi, founder of DOYO Live, and this is the DOYO Live Marketing Show. Welcome in, everybody. Appreciate if you are able to join today. So happy that we've got an opportunity, what I like to deem on a Hip Hop Friday. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how it relates to a couple of topics that we've got to discuss today. Some very exciting stuff to get to. Before I do that, I'm on location. That's right. It's an away game today. Remote location. I'm down at Youngstown State University's Williamson College of Business, a world-class, beautiful facility that we have here as a resource in Youngstown, Ohio, where we held the inaugural DOYO Live back in August that was headlined by Joe Polizzi, attended by over 200 people from the area, plus sponsors. It was a great day. It was a great event. And where I deliver a sermon 3 days a week to the bright young minds in my social media literacy and communications classes at Youngstown State University. So it's great to be with you today. Again, this is Dennis Schiraldi, the founder of DOYO Live. And today, what we're talking about on a Hip Hop Friday is influencer marketing and Facebook recommendations. So as we get into that, I was cruising in, and the 1991-92 Hip Hop Classic, for any of you hip hop aficionados, should immediately know what that is. If you don't, let me take you to a step back in time. That is also, the Hip Hop Classic is known as the Chronic, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg's debut. And it takes me back in time, a guy that I've developed a great deal of respect for through social media and the use of social media, a guy by the name of Ralph Fajek. If you don't know him, I think you should start following him. I know you should start following him immediately across all social media channels. Ralph is a great motivator. He spreads a lot of positivity through his social media channels on Facebook, on Instagram. There's a lot of cool stuff. And one of the things that Ralph always talks about is how music is such an important, integral piece of everybody's life. And what's interesting is that I remember him mentioning something that takes you back immediately to where you were at a point in time. And I can remember where I was in 1992 when I initially heard 1, 2, 3 into the 4, right? So everybody knows that lyric from that rap song. It seems like it's crossed over. And I was on a plane out to Boise, Idaho, playing in the Division II national tournament at Walsh University, basketball, hoops. So that was pretty cool. Anytime I hear that, I think about that immediate opportunity. And you're probably thinking to yourself, number one, what the heck does that have to do with influencer marketing? Well, let me just go there for a second. So as I name drop Ralph Fajek, the reason I did that and talking a little bit about influencer marketing is because it's people like Ralph that have huge, tremendous followings and influence in online marketing today. And it's a point in time in history that we've never really seen this, to where it wasn't necessarily scalable. We all have influence. We all handle introductions to people from a networking perspective. But now we have these big followings in social media. Whether you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you've got a big following on YouTube, you've got a lot of people reading your blog, and you get a lot of eyeballs and critical mass. And all of a sudden, these people have become very, very important and can be an integral part of your marketing strategy. So let me explain. One of the benefits, especially in social media, is that you not only get your audience attraction and for whatever you cover, but you also get the other person's influence as well. So in that particular case, you want to go out and you want to try and identify people that have social media influence. You're looking for people that maybe have a certain size following in a geographic location. That works very well in the small to mid-sized business space. You could go out in a place like Youngstown, Ohio, and you can find who has big followings on Twitter, on Instagram. It's not very hard to do. Kind of like taking it back old school, prior to when there were third-party applications. There's a ton of them out there today, by the way. You've got BuzzSumo, Social Rank, Clout. And so for a mere mortal like myself, Clout applies basically the same as a credit score for financial. Clout provides you your credit score essentially for your online influence. And a lot of times that's based upon the amount of followers you have and the amount of engagement that you get from social media. My cloud score is 62. Again, for a civilian, I'm not Kim Kardashian. So that's a decent, respectable score. So you could utilize these third-party tools to identify the individuals that have big followings. So identification in influencer marketing is huge. You can also do this, and some people think maybe it's for the small to mid-sized business in a certain geographic location, but it stems way beyond that. In a business-to-business environment, and say you're doing business on a national level, you can identify influencers in a certain vertical or industry, whether it's fashion or it's manufacturing or it's healthcare. There are people that are out there that have built up their followings on social media. They've built them up in blogs, and they've built them up as journalists as well. So you can go out there and you can actually identify these individuals, again, through third-party applications or just by doing a little bit of research. Set up your Twitter list based upon this information of who you're trying to get eyeballs and information to. And as you identify your influencers, then you're going to obviously want to try to engage those individuals. And just like any courting period, coming on too strong too quickly is obviously not going to provide you with great engagement. One of the things I did with DOYO Live when we launched the marketing conference is I went out and identified people in the local business area that had big followings on their social media because I knew it could help to create awareness. So we had people like Carmela Williams, who has a hair brand line called Carmela Marie. We've had Jamie Jameson, who has a huge following locally on Instagram. A guy that I have a lot of respect for, Lewis Lee, another guy that has tremendous reach and influence. So engaging these individuals, the way that you want to start engaging your influencer audience is, number one, is to follow them on the social media landscape that you're looking at, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. The challenging part about Facebook of following influencers is that if they have a page, generally they have a big following and they're not going to have a lot of recognition to you on Facebook when you go and like their page. However, when they start to post information, if you can just simply like, share, and comment on that information, you start to bridge that gap and build that relationship. The other is going on to Twitter, adding that person to an influencer list. So creating lists on Twitter is very important. And then also, again, retweeting, replying, and hitting the little heart button on Twitter. You know, if any of you have ever been on Twitter and you get a reply or a retweet, it's kind of like, you know, the Willy Wonka effect. You know, it's like winning the golden ticket to go to the factory because Twitter's such a noisy space. And so whenever somebody retweets any information that I have, I know it because it's such a micro environment and there's a lot going on and there's limited engagement. The same thing with Instagram. You want to go on, you want to follow these individuals, you want to comment and you want to share, and eventually, hopefully, they'll begin to follow you. And then eventually, as you begin to build that relationship up with this engagement, is then when you start to cross the chasm into engaging that individual, into potentially utilizing them for influencer marketing for your brand. So once you bridge that gap, whether that information comes in a direct message over Twitter or an instant message over Facebook, and also you could do the same over Instagram. And the fact is that you're going to want to eventually bridge that gap once you've got some mutual respect, and maybe there's a clue there. Maybe they start to follow you back. Maybe they start to mention you. Those sorts of things become very imperative in the whole social media environment. Again, the reason why we want to do influencer marketing is because of the fact that you get my audience, I get your audience, and that brand endorsement helps for you to create a tremendous amount of awareness through people now that have influence over social media. So now the third piece is the wild, wild west of influencer marketing is the compensation. Compensation is all over the board. People get paid anywhere from $250 for a single post to endorse a brand or a concept or an event on social media, upwards of people creating both content and then syndicating it, six-figure incomes. There's 20-year-old kids that are out there basically strong-arming CEOs of company that have millions of followers on Vine. to go out and create a creative vine about a company. And you have to look at and see, what is that worth to me? For me to be able to expand my audience and to be able to get market share, to create awareness for my brand, what's that worth to me? Is it worth a couple $100s for one post, or is it worth it for an ongoing type of arrangement and engagement on a month-to-month basis? And you have to basically determine that. The market kind of sets the price on that, and you have to judge what the return on investment is going to be on that as well. So influencer marketing, a very important aspect to the current state of affairs. That's why, I don't want to say that's the main reason why you go out and build up a social media audience, but it's a really good reason that if you're looking to create traction for your business and potentially a personal brand, to go out and do that, because that is a real thing. It's happening on a regular basis, and it's not just the Kim Kardashians again or the Kylie Jenners of the world. It is for the mere mortals, the civilians of the social media landscape, to get paid for endorsement of a brand and to be able to syndicate that information out. So that's influencer marketing. The next topic that I'm really hot on this week, and I'm really totally pumped. I have this whole love-hate relationship with Facebook. And the reason I have this love-hate relationship with Facebook is because Facebook has obviously limited the amount of information that is being shared on Facebook pages. They obviously want you to pay in order to be able to get reach, eyeballs, and interest going onto content. But just most recently, as this past week, Facebook recommendations came out, and it's an absolutely complete, I think, game changer. It's really intriguing on the surface. Essentially, if you don't know how it works, you basically post something and you say, I'd like to get a recommendation on an event, a place to eat, a place to go, a school, a marketing conference, a marketing agency, whatever it is that's out there that you want to get a recommendation. And Facebook recognizes that through machine learning, which is a very important thing that I'm going to come back to in a minute. So as you post something to Facebook recommendation, it has the machine learning application, and then basically it gives you an opportunity to turn on the notifications to your location, to your friends. And as they make recommendations back, Facebook goes and searches and pulls Facebook pages based upon what your friends are recommending, and it gives you an opportunity in-app to basically be able to see the page, to like the page, and to share that information with the rest of your network. Why that's huge. This past week, just kind of joking around, and I know that the Youngstown community loves their pizza. And that when you say that, they're very passionate. It's probably one of the best pizza pocket areas like in the entire country. And this comes from a guy that spent about 6 years living in New York City, traveled the country extensively. So we do, and I'm very biased, have some of the best pizza in the world. So just running a test, I asked, I'm looking for the best recommendation on the best pizza in Youngstown. And when I did that last week or 2 weeks ago, I had maybe 5 friends give me a basic recommendation. They may have liked the post. I had literally over 30 people and almost 100 likes to that particular post saying, here's our favorite and here's what we would recommend. And then I had all the Facebook pages and I started to like those. Why this is so significant in the world of online marketing, because up to this point, and Google's been flirting around with this, is that everything that we know about search engine optimization today, which is a big fancy word for how you get found in online search with Google, who owns 80% of all search engine traffic, is basically through an algorithmic, I know, I dropped it, it's one of my cliches that I hate. All marketing people are doing it right now. That's right. A mathematical equation as to how Google determines as to what you see. And if you ask 10 SEO experts, search engine optimization experts, on how you get found in online search, you'll get 9 different answers. So as SEO is the unicorn of online marketing, we do know some specific things. We know that you have to get indexed with the Google search engines. Your information's got to be compelling, it's got to be interesting, it's got to be relevant, it's got to have keywords that are associated with the topics of the conversation that people are typing into a Google search. You have to analyze this information with Google Analytics or some sort of analytics tool to see what your traffic looks like. And everything up to this point, let me back up, links in and out of your site. But now what Google is experimenting with is artificial intelligence. That's a big one. Here's why. And we're talking like the Will Smith robotic type of futuristic robots coming to life. It's here, people, and it's very early. But just like my neighbor can pull their new Tesla, the car can actually pull itself in and out of the garage, right? That's artificial intelligence. Elon Musk was just on a trade publication in the past 2 weeks talking about artificial intelligence. The Amazon tool Alexa, that's artificial intelligence. We're looking at machine-based learning. It's no longer type something into Google. It's been here. Apple has used Siri for a long time. All of you have used this for voice recognition to try and find something that's very immediate. And just this past week, or in the past month, I updated my operating system on my Mac computer. And now I notice that Siri is actually on my desktop as well. So machine-based learning, contextual type of text, voice search, and then deep machine-based learning as to how the neural synapses work is very interesting, and it's actually permeating now to where a lot of SEO experts are still going to live in that let's stuff a website with a bunch of keywords, let's do all these basics that we know, because that's still going to be the world. But the early adopters right now are taking a look at machine-based learning and artificial intelligence and how it's going to start to play a mix. Here's what else is very interesting to me about Facebook recommendations. So the world pre-Google, pre-Facebook, pre-internet relied on word-of-mouth marketing for the most part as the affinity, as the way to spread the word. But then all of a sudden, Google took over, and it's not officially documented, but I'd like to believe that in 2010, Google search officially overtook word-of-mouth marketing. We tend to go to Google first for our advice for search, and then we go to our friends to ask them for advice. So what is happening with Facebook right now with Facebook recommendations, which is also, I think, very cool, is the fact that the reason why they're doing it is that they're trying to put an influence back on word-of-mouth marketing. And what's interesting about it, though, it's not the typical word-of-mouth marketing where I see a friend on the street corner, if people still hang out on the street corner, at the coffee shop, and make a recommendation on a certain product or service. Facebook is doing this, so now we have this connection with people, word-of-mouth marketing at scale. So your Facebook marketing strategy, even though you don't maybe necessarily get as much reach as you used to, you're still not bought into having to have a page or maybe even boosting content. It's going to be really, 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 really important moving forward to have a Facebook page as Facebook recommendations grows, simply because of the fact that your friends are now going to not only be making the recommendations in person to you, they're going to be doing it on the world's largest social media network. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for dropping in today. It means so much to me. I really appreciate it. Share this with all your friends. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the future. My email address, Dennis@DOYO Live. That's DOY live.com. Let me know what you think. Lots of new content up on the blog. We did a webinar this past week on where do you get started with your content marketing strategy. We've got some new content coming out, and on November 17th, we've got another webinar coming. It's dubbed The Odd Couple. It's digital versus traditional marketing in the B2B space. I'm going to have my good friend and DOYO Live committee member, YSU professor Mike Ponticus on, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation. I'm going to play Oscar Madison. He'll be Felix Unger, and we're going to get into the differences between the two. We'll be back next week for Facebook Live. Let me know what you want me to cover. Thanks so much. Everybody have a great weekend.